We are honored to have with us today Birchtech, and I have with me today the management from Birchtech. We've got Rick MacPherson, the CEO of Birchtech, headquartered in Corsicana, Texas. It's an environmental services and technology company that provides water purification solutions that focus on PFAS and PFOS removal from potable water. It also engages in developing and delivering solutions to the power industry in the United States and internationally. It provides mercury capture solutions. Its sorbent enhancement additive SEA technology offers total mercury control with solutions based on thorough scientific understanding of actual and probable interactions involved in mercury capture and coal-fired flue gas. The company is also involved in extraction and processing of rare earth elements. The company has 100 million shares outstanding. Stock trades around 70 cents for a 65 million market cap and 2 million of net cash. Welcome, gentlemen. I believe you'll have a presentation followed by, we'll do some Q&A.
Thank you very much for the introduction. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for having us talk to you today. My name is Rick MacPherson. I'm the founder and CEO of Birchtech. We're known as the Clean Coal and Clean Water Technologies Company, and we provide more affordable contaminant removal. So looking at the company from an overview perspective, basically what we have are two divisions within the firm. The first division is the Air Emissions Control Company. We started this process from the Energy Environment Research Center back in 2011 when we first commercialized the technologies that came out of that facility. For that last period of time, we've been growing the commercial side of the business, first with state operations and opportunities, regulations, and then moving on in 2015-16 to federal regulated mercury removal. We've been very successful in that field. It's a growing field for us, and we have branched out in the last 3 years into water remediation as well, using our know-how and skill set in carbonaceous materials to move into water purification. I have Dr. Mazyck with me today. He's the lead of that division. We'll get into the technical side of those things as we go forward. I was introduced with the corporate profile, as you can see to the right of the screen, and we are traded as we speak on the Toronto Exchange, the main board, as well as the OTC here in the US. We are moving forward with an uplisting onto one of the main boards here in the US this fall. So there's three basic growth opportunities for the company. The first is the ongoing supply side of our air business, and we see that as a growing opportunity given that we have a number of different opportunities that we have signed agreements with over the past number of months and expect more to come with regards to that supply side of our business. To date, we've done over $265 million in supply side business, and we continue to grow that as we move forward. What's an interesting part of our business as well, however, is we have a very well-protected IP portfolio, and we had to defend that over the last number of years, but it resulted in a number of different settlements. So far, about $40 million with regards to license agreements that we've received. And we also had a significant federal court case, which we won at trial, and were awarded $57 million for that IP infringement. We've requested from the court, due to the willfulness of the infringement, an approximate $160 million, and we're waiting for that final judgment to come down any week now. And so that's another part of our operations that does contribute to the shareholder value. Third, but almost most importantly as we go forward, is our move into the water treatment business. We've been very fortunate in hiring Dr. Mazyck and about another dozen technicians and engineers to use what we had as basic knowledge in carbonaceous materials and add to it the specificity that we needed to be able to bring a new disruptive technology to the water treatment market. And that's what we aim to do. That's what we did in the air business. When we got in the air business, powdered activated carbon was used, and typically an average boiler would take about 400 or 500 pounds of powdered activated carbon hourly. We reduced that down, in most cases, to about 70. We reduced it 75% down to about 100 or more pounds per hour. And so we made a big disruptive change in that industry. And a lot of companies that we competed with at the time, like Norit and ADA, which changed to ARC, who were here earlier today, had a big change in their business because of the technology that we introduced, which was a very disruptive but very productive, effective technology that enhanced the ability to capture mercury and reduce the cost drastically. And that's what we hope to do in the water side. We concur with a lot of the speakers today that GAC is probably not only the most traditional, but the most effective way to go forward to capture PFAS in particular, as well as purifying water in general. And we see that as the area that we excel in as well, especially with the expertise of the people that we've added to our team. So going forward, we're looking forward to making the introductions of new technologies and new approaches that we have been developing these past few years. So in a summary here, with regards to emissions control, the average operation that we have with somebody generates about $2 million a year in revenue. Typical contracts run 3 to 5 years. We have about 30% margin in that air business. Defending the portfolio, as I mentioned, includes both the $57 million lawsuit win, $20 million approximately in ongoing business, and we have had 100% wins in defending this IP package, which is very valuable to the shareholders and is yet to be fully realized. Now, talking about the water treatment and the clean water technologies, there's a lot of detail here and a lot of innovation and development work that we've been doing. I'd like to turn it over to Dr. Mazyck at this point and have him walk you through that. David?
Thanks, Rick. Good afternoon. A little bit about my background, about 30 years in the activated carbon industry, building activated carbon plants, designing them, operating them, as well as owning them. I've designed a number of products that are presently being used in the marketplace for PFAS absorption, using activated carbon as the basis. I was fortunate to serve as the chairman for the American Waterworks Association Activated Carbon Standards Committee for about 10 years. And the focus of the presentation today is going to be on thermal reactivation, which happened to be the topic of my PhD work. As Rick mentioned, Birchtech is expanding its portfolio into the water treatment market. I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about the PFAS market. We've heard that growing opportunity throughout the day, and we agree with the estimates around a $1.5 billion expected U.S. market opportunity. What I'd like to spend some time on this slide and then working through is our data-driven solution approach, primarily surrounding our 2 design centers, which we believe are the only capabilities presently in North America to be able to partner with water utilities, bring in their spent carbon, or we can spend their carbon through exhaustion, and then be able to reactivate that carbon at pilot scale, and then assess the performance. And I'll talk more about that in a little bit. Concurrently, we are and will be introducing some new activated carbons into the market, primarily those looking at enhanced absorption capacity. So a little bit more about the approach. We take for granted, and we know that water is relatively inexpensive in North America. And therefore, if we look down to the water utilities, we recognize that the cost of compliance is something that they have to significantly deal with presently, as well as with growing regulatory pressures. And therefore, our position is to look how we can best work with these utilities in a way for them to meet the compliance, but at the lowest cost possible. And we'll be leveraging Rick's team that has decades of experience in optimizing activated carbons for specific applications, as well as the team that I've brought to the table, bringing those capabilities together to be able to enter into this water market with new activated carbons, primarily also expanding into the thermal reactivation approach. You're all probably very familiar with this map, and what it represents is PFAS contamination across the United States. This is not a reminder of the challenge that's set forth, but rather what I would like to do is spend the time reminding us that it's not just PFAS, it's a family of compounds. And we know that the water quality everywhere from Florida up to Washington and up to Maine is going to be drastically different. Whether it's the groundwater with low TOC and other contaminants, or surface water with a variety of different natural organic matter constituents, and the design of the treatment plants being so different, what I wanted to focus on and mention in this particular graph is that our approach is data-driven, and therefore not just focusing on PFAS as a single compound, but a family of compounds, being also certain that when we bring this water and the carbon into our design centers, that we're considering all aspects of that. And I'll talk about how that concludes into our reactivation commercialization strategy here in a minute. So again, the focus is on proprietary reactivation. We hear a lot in the industry that talks about not enough supply of virgin carbon. We also hear about disposal of activated carbon, or perhaps even an incineration of activated carbon. But the solution can be reactivation of activated carbon. Taking the spent carbon, running it through a process that we know is reactivation, and bringing it back to the customer. And our aim is to do so with a goal that that reactivated carbon performs about the same as the virgin carbon. We see that virgin activated carbon is increasing substantially in price, particularly over the last several years. We do agree that bringing on new virgin carbon capacity is expensive, and therefore virgin carbon pricing may continue to escalate with time. Reactivated carbon is about half the cost. Significant savings in being able to help a utility meet that compliance strategy. And our goal in doing this is around the investments that have already been made and up and operating, working with utilities with our 2 design centers. One of them focuses on the analytical chemistry part, whereby we're able to operate rapid small-scale column tests, analyzing several carbons or other media, if so desired, concurrently, in a state-of-the-art process. The other design center focuses on taking the spent carbon and looking at the reactivation protocol. Not just one reactivation protocol, but a number of those, and I'll talk about why a number of those in a little bit. There is some loss in reactivating carbon, so we recognize that virgin carbon has to be added. For example, maybe about 10%, but we can also work with utilities on that best blend of virgin and reactivated carbon so that every single time that reactivated carbon is brought back into their water treatment plant, they can realize the same level of PFAS compliance. A little bit more about our design centers is, again, the focus on data-driven. We recognize that every single water is going to have a variety of different constituents that are going to vary. In some cases, even for a utility, might vary throughout the seasons. Whether it's the TOC concentration, the PFAS concentration, the other maximum contaminant level contaminants that we have to be worrying about. Sometimes there's inorganic accumulation. And all of those are going to be evaluated and considered as we move forward with that thermal reactivation protocol. And again, that's happening in one of the design centers. The other is where we've custom designed our thermal reactivation unit and had it manufactured by a third party to be able to control all aspects of the thermal reactivation. What I've not mentioned right now is that while thermal reactivation can address the supply of virgin carbon, whether to incinerate or other options, Again, we see reactivation as solving those problems, but also what we're doing in this design centers is proving to the customers that, one, PFAS is destroyed during the thermal reactivation process, and when that reactivated carbon is returned back to them, that there is no residual PFAS within the carbon, no leaching of PFAS, and that's a part of this particular package, and that's our value, data-driven, bringing together our knowledge of the thermodynamics of reactivation, our knowledge in water chemistry, and then the core of Birchtech now for many of years in activated carbon science. So how do we take this information and scale from the design centers to full scale? And here is where we have incorporated decades of know-how into a proprietary process, one that we're not aware of any others that are presently doing. Reactivation has been used worldwide for over 100 years. And for all intents and purposes, whether it's close here to New York, or whether it's in Cincinnati, or whether it's in some other part of the world, for the most part, reactivation has been done the same way. And I have visited many of these plants and assisted and consulted for them in optimizing their processes. But what they're not doing is bringing in these two other components, which is one, the water chemistry. So whether it's the groundwater that's being used to exhaust the GAC, or it's the clarified water that is going to the filter adsorber, we're going to analyze that water. We know what we're looking for, and therefore we can optimize and look for those particular constituents that we know are going to impact the thermal reactivation process. We're also going to analyze the spent carbon. And again, we know what we're looking for. And then we're going to build this into our proprietary model. And that model then is going to give us the conditions that we want to operate for that thermal reactivation protocol. It's very important that when the carbon goes through this process, that we can maintain the pore size distribution of the carbon. And that can be done by optimizing key variables, whether it's the temperature, whether it's the residence time, or other key variables. Instead of just treating reactivation as spent carbon in, reactivated carbon out, we are adding a significant level of complexity by understanding the water chemistry as well as the spent carbon characteristics, putting that into our model, and then being able to custom reactivate for the water utility so they can realize their spent carbon coming to us, getting reactivated, and then going back into their water treatment plant. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap up the presentation and then turn it over to questions and answers. We see that here in late part of 2025 as well as in 2026, we are well positioned for strategic growth. Rick's talked about the settlements and the infringing parties and our entry into the water market. Bringing our expertise with respect to some new sorbents, particularly tailored for some particular opportunities, as well as our thermal reactivation approach. We feel that this is an excellent way to be able to help water utilities meet these compliance strategies, again, concluding with the objective to significantly lowering their costs. If we go back to the cost-benefit analysis that the EPA put together, if we look at a variety of the consulting firm reports that have put out, and they come out every single year, and if you do a search or a find for reactivation, we find that that term is missing. And what we're proposing is that these cost estimates can be drastically lowered, allowing the industry not to have to landfill, not to have to incinerate, but to be able to thermal reactivate to meet PFAS compliance. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Mazyck. That was a great overview, and Rick. Rick, maybe we could start out. And I know you maybe can't get into great detail on this, but how should investors think about the timeline and scale of your planned granular activated carbon reactive facility build out, and what are the key milestones that would validate Birchtech's ability to capture a meaningful share of the PFAS compliance market?
Thanks for that question. Very good. So let me just summarize for the investment community. Our strength is in carbonaceous materials, and we're transferring from the air business into water while maintaining the air business as our core business. It will underwrite our growth as we go forward, and the shareholder value should increase as well with liquidity once we move on to the main market. We're looking at the New York market this fall. So from a corporate point of view, we've got lots of development potential and growth plans ahead of us. What we're looking at doing is building out, continuing to build out the air business, but at the same time, use these design centers and research facilities that we've built to really start to engage the utility market and the engineering groups across the country in the water business, and offer them a full service approach whereby they would send us their spent carbons, their water samples, and the medium that they prefer. And as Dr. Mazyck has mentioned, we'll carry out exhaustive testing and bring them back a full package of what it's going to take for them and their water to get into compliance on their general regulations as well as the upcoming PFAS regulations. And from that point forward, we would be able to offer them specific utility by utility guidelines as to how to meet the regulations. We do plan on building a reactivation facility. We'll make further material announcements on that later this month, if not October at the latest, because we really do see reactivation as not only an economical approach moving forward for the long term that will help all of the folks that are using GAC get into compliance at a proper price, but we see it as a real advantage from an environmental point of view. We've been an environmental technology company since we started in 2008. We'd like to continue to be that first and foremost, and reducing the amount of GAC that's required once all of the systems are in place and operating is one of our key, if not the key goals. We did that on the air side and reduced the amount of GAC that was necessary to be produced and used to capture mercury. We very much expect that we can do that for water as well. 80% of the coal that's mined that goes into a GAC turns into emissions. And we'd like to be able to keep that from happening in the long term, although it will be a necessary approach to get everybody up to speed. But once we get situated on the reactivation side, we should be able to keep that GAC that's in-house at the utilities reactivated for many, many years to come. And so our strategy, our go-to-market, or whatever you want to call it, value proposition, very much is to become the go-to company in the long term for reactivation and GAC use for PFAS containment.
That's a great explanation, Rick. Maybe either one, please feel free to jump in. But just given the 50% increase in virgin GAC pricing over the past year and a half, how do you see reactivated GAC adoption evolving among utilities, and what effect does this have for Birchtech's water treatment solutions?
David?
Yes, thank you. Can you hear me? Perfect. Yeah, we would envision that reactivation will increase substantially for a number of reasons. And part of it is it takes one truck to bring virgin carbon to the water utility, but two to take it away, because carbon can hold half its weight in water. And so when Rick talks about the sustainable nature of reactivation versus virgin carbon manufacturing, it's not just that manufacturing operation, but it is also the associated environmental impact and the cost of shipping. The distance to get to the reactivation plants also is a substantial cost, and where there are reactivation plants now, there are surcharges, for example, in winter months. With the increase in GAC usage, particularly for PFAS, we're also seeing that virgin carbons capacity is lower compared to what it has been for the last number of decades, when it's primarily been used as a TOC reduction, for example, to limit disinfection byproducts. Many would put their GAC in service and leave it there for 2 years or maybe even 3 years. And I'm sure many of you are seeing much shorter exhaustion rates, 6 months or maybe 12 months. And because of that increased exhaustion is another reason why we would see that reactivation is a better option.
Yep. Thank you for that, Dr. Mazyck. That's a very good point. And I guess for traction, what are you seeing today from municipalities? We probably talked about this quite a bit today, and industrial customers from your initial feedstock agreements, and how might these early relationships translate into commercial revenue in the coming years?
Yeah, I'll answer that one. So at this point in time, we're engaged with many different utilities and engineering firms, evaluating their spent carbons and their waters in general. We see that culminating in, through this relationship building, a position for us as an expert in the field, and allowing us the opportunity then to proceed to longer commercial relationships with them, and indeed are in the process of solidifying offtake agreements from the initial contacts that will underpin our first reactivation center. We think that this approach, which we utilized in the air business back in the 2008 to 2011 period of testing and comparing proper scientific data on different solutions, is the best way forward. Anybody can, advertise or promote a certain commodity or product, but it's another thing to back up and apply true science and show them exactly what they're getting for the product that they're using or the method they're using, and compare that apples to apples with what we can do, and then offer them that in a certified operation that they could use going forward. And we feel that in the long run will be very successful.
I think you've proven that with the amount of infringement on your IP. There's obviously quite a bit of demand. For back to timelines, Birchtech's planned reactivation facility in the southeast will be first to market to move into the industry. What kind of tailwind should investors expect from this plant, and do you have maybe any timeline on when we can expect it to actually go online, and then maybe next opportunity?
Well, we expect the permitting process to be concluded very shortly. It'll take us a little over a year to build the facility that we have designed. So we would expect to be up and operating by the end of 2026, first quarter 2027 at the latest. But over the next year, we will be moving into different types of water purification product marketing. We'll start to announce new commercial sales in the water division, most likely this month, and we'll continue to announce wins in the water business as we go forward. We'll be presenting projected revenues before the end of the year for our water division. We've not done that yet, but we're very confident on being able to ramp the business nicely in 2026, and then significantly once we start operating the reactivation center in early 2027.
Sounds very enticing, and look forward to following that. Is there, maybe I'll open up the audience for a last question before we close. Yes, ma'am.
98% of the population in the U.S. have PFAS in their bloodstream. I wondered how aware the entire universe is aware of this situation, and is PFAS testing something that we should adopt already? And then I understand it's a different question than in terms of the level in the bloodstream. How much is that as a threshold to cause health issues, including many of the diseases mentioned here? I actually did not know that high percentage of population has PFAS in their bloodstreams.
Yeah, thank you for the question. I mean, we're certainly seeing, more awareness brought to the subject. Movies, for example, and with the PFAS legislation, I know that I personally have caught on to it now, perhaps maybe you will even more so, is how many commercials advertise, for example, their cookware that have non-PFAS. And so they're not necessarily making that connection to the health effects, because certainly it's not our job to raise concern, rather develop solutions. But we certainly see that industry is moving towards solutions that are removing this from our cookware, our bottles and the like.
Well, thank you, Dr. Mazyck and Rick. That was a great overview of your company. Thank you for being with us today, and we hope to get you back next year. Well done.
Tony Bancroft and Timothy Winter, CFA, are portfolio managers. Wayne Pinsent, CFA, is Director of Research and Research Analyst, and Rosemary Morbelli, CFA, and Dr. Rebecca Stern, PhD, are Research Analysts at Gabelli Funds. The above webcast is a recording from the 3rd Annual PFAS Symposium, which occurred on September 17, 2025. GAMCO is providing these links as a matter of general information. We do not intend for these links to be a complete description of any security or company, nor is it a research report with respect to any of the companies mentioned herein. As of June 30, 2025, affiliates of GAMCO Investors Incorporated beneficially owned 1.1% of Minerals Technologies and less than 1% of all other companies mentioned. The analysts' views are subject to change at any time based on market and other conditions. The information in this posting represents the opinions of the analyst and is not intended to be a forecast of future events, a guarantee of future results, or investment advice. Views expressed are those of the analyst and may differ from those of other GAMCO officers, analysts, other employees, or of the firm as a whole. Because the investment personnel at GAMCO and our affiliates make individual investment decisions with respect to the client accounts that they manage, these accounts may have transactions inconsistent with the information contained in this posting. Certain GAMCO personnel may know the substance of the posting prior to its posting. This webcast is not an offer to sell any security, nor is it a solicitation of an offer to buy any security. Stocks are subject to market, economic and business risks that cause their prices to fluctuate. When you sell shares, they may be worth less than what you paid for them. For more information, a prospectus, or summary prospectus, visit our website at www.gabelli.com or call 800 Gabelli 800 422 3554 914 921 5100 fax 914 921 5118 info@gabelli.com.